Hello and welcome to my review of the Godzilla 2014 movie. I've tried to record this lots of times and I always end up going real long and getting a lot nastier than I would like to because I really hated this movie. I hated it. Okay, there's two things about it that really pissed me off that I see, they're infections in entertainment industry today with movies and TV shows, which is grayism and beigeism. Which is this grayism, which is these people who think that having any humor in a drama ruins it, that having any kind of, just regular morality play type of stuff is somehow, bad. They want everything gray. They want a gray mood, they want gray people in a gray world doing gray things in against a gray landscape. They want gray, 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 and nothing but gray. No humor, no give and take, no ebb and flow, no up and down. Everything is just monotonous and gray. There's no good, there's no bad, there's just gray. Except, of course, that the real world isn't gray, it's in color. And at least when you're watching something that's black and white in how it's the depictions, of how things are going, there's contrast. And the problem with nothing but gray is that there's no contrast. There's no color, there's no life, there's nothing. It's tasteless, it's odorless, it's just muck. Gray muck. Okay, and I have lots of problems with shows like Breaking Bad and Game of Thrones. I fucking hate them. As far as I'm concerned, it's sadomasochistic voyeurism to watch those shows. But also, it's just this pervasive grayism that's invaded and infected movie making and TV making these days that pisses me off. And this movie, this Godzilla 2014, was full of it. Again, it's just this gray. The whole grayism is just a shroud over this whole movie. With this forced seriousness and affected, somber tone that's just forced through the whole movie. It's monotonous, gray. And the other thing that's become a trend, especially with the advent of social media and everybody having their nose up everybody else's ass constantly, is all this emphasis on personal details that aren't really important to the story at all. Beigeism is what I call it, taken from Billy Connolly's stand-up comedy, and his use of the word beige is just this, people who are obsessed with the common, the banal, the everyday, and just beige, bland, lifeless again. It's two different aspects of the same coin. And on one hand, you have people who want no real contrast to anything that they watch. They don't want humor. They just want this gray muck for everything. And then on the other hand, you have this beigeism, which is just people who cannot imagine anything more interesting than their own lives, apparently. So they think that they should have to watch the personal lives of every fictional character they see. Because somehow knowing what brand of toothpaste a character uses is going to tell you something about that character that has any pertinence to the story that's being told at all, when it really doesn't. If it's a detective story and he uses minty toothpaste and he's trying to solve a serial killer, a crime spree, how does knowing that he uses a minty toothpaste going to help this story at all? It doesn't. Or the fact that he's having an affair with a married woman. Does this tell you anything about the fucking crime spree that's going on and how he's going to solve it? No. Okay, it's this beigeism, this soap opera bullshit, this obsession with personal lives and personal details. I fucking hate it. And this movie was full of that too. Although not necessarily in the same way as something, say, like the way it's infected a show I used to enjoy a lot, Bones, that's become inundated with beigeism. Just everyday boring details instead of focusing on what's interesting, which is the crimes, and solving them. I don't mind some personal details creeping into TV shows that have been running a long time, but when you do entire episodes where the personal details take up as much or more time than the crime they're trying to solve, that is where it's really starting to piss me off. That's just an infection of beigeism. But in this movie, this Godzilla 2014, the way it infected it was that the entire movie is about a soldier trying to go home. That's the entire movie, right, in a nutshell. Really, the Godzilla and the monsters are a fucking backdrop. They're just the complication. The real story the real emphasis is all on the soldier trying to go home, which is such a banal, beige soap opera storyline. And it might have been a bit better to watch if the characters weren't also inundated with this grayism. So you end up with gray characters in a gray world acting out a beige storyline. Okay, and I fucking hated it for that. But that's only one part of it. I also hate contrived storytelling. I hate bad storytelling in general. Okay? I keep running into these people that they seem to think that the entire world is either a boring-ass movie like Gravity or Michael Bay, and there's nothing in between. That seems to be who I'm running into a lot. Another argument I run into a lot is, Godzilla wasn't in because Godzilla was hardly in this movie. It's a completely separate issue, but I'll address it since I'm talking about arguments I've had at the moment. Godzilla wasn't really in the original movie any longer than the new one. Well, actually, Godzilla was in the original for about 22 minutes. But the real thing there is that Godzilla was the driving force of the story all the way through the original movie. From start to finish, it was about Godzilla. In the new one, Godzilla's a fucking deus ex machina that saves the male lead twice. That's the entire length and breadth of Godzilla's role in this movie. Okay? And really, if you want to talk about percentage of time in the movie, in the original, it's only like a 96-minute movie, and he's in it for like 22. I did the math using a calculator, and that's like over 20% of the length of the movie. Godzilla is in it. In addition to the fact that it's about him from start to finish. I've actually had arguments with people who, for some reason, think that the love triangle was somehow the actual plot that was the main plot of the movie, even though it doesn't come up for like half an hour into the movie and then is only brought up solely to introduce the way that they kill Godzilla. That's the only reason that it's in the movie. And yet I've argued with these people who for some reason think that is the main plot of the movie is the love triangle, which is just absolute idiocy. I'm talking about the original. Whereas this new one, it's all about the soldier trying to go home. That is all the emphasis is on him. Everything happens to him or to someone he is involved with, excepting on the beach in Hawaii and Vegas. When the female Muto attacks Vegas, every other time something happens with the giant monsters, either the male lead is there or one of his family members is. And every step of the way he is affected by what happens. He is not, the Muto and Godzilla, he does not react to them. Or rather, it's not a matter of reaction, it's just, how the hell is the best way to phrase this? It's what happens in relation to what. And you watch any of the other Godzilla movies, there are things that go on and humans act in relation to those things going on. In this, the male lead is always the one that everything happens in relation to. He is the center of the story, and everything happens in relation to him. Which is not telling a story from a personal viewpoint. Telling a story from a personal viewpoint is telling it from one person's point of view when what they do in relation to the event that's going on. Okay? But to somehow make one human the center of events when you're talking about giant monster attacks, and to have one human as the center of the events and everything happening in relation to him, that is just horrible storytelling. That is the most contrived bullshit you can imagine. Think about it. If you did not see this in this movie, I do not know how you could possibly not. You have got to be a fucking moron if you did not see it. And if you did not see what I saw, you are a fucking idiot. Because think about it. Where is all the emphasis? Everything happens in relation to this one human being. The Muto shows up and destroys the power plant. Where's all the emphasis? It kills his mother while he watches. That is where all the emphasis is placed. Not on anything else that's happening, him. And how it's affecting him. Which puts him at the center of the universe, and this major event, this huge event, is happening in relation to him. It is not his viewpoint of this event, because all the emphasis is placed on him, not the event with him watching it. Okay, second major thing that happens in the movie is when the Muto breaks out. Where's all the emphasis? Him and his father. And then his father dying. The emphasis is not on the Muto breaking out, it's on him and his father being killed. Once again, a human being is at the center of the fucking universe and everything is happening in relation to him. Okay, but at this point I will give the movie that at this point it's not horrible. It's contrived, but it's not horribly so. You could get around it at this point and accept it. But where they go from that point on is just the worst storytelling, the worst writing, the worst scripting I've seen in ages. Okay? The male lead goes to Hawaii, and then the Muto shows up after he does. Okay? This is just ludicrous. I mean, how anybody could see this and maintain any degree of suspension of disbelief is beyond me. That this giant monster, with all the islands of Hawaii to choose from, and other places other than Hawaii to choose from, is going to land on the exact same island that the male lead is on. And is going to attack the city he's in. And is going to attack the train that he's on. Okay? But even at this point, it's an action movie and he's the hero of the action movie. Fine, we can accept this. But then when Godzilla shows up just in time for him to be saved, again, this is the point that I really started getting pissed off at the movie. Even though I was already irritated by the beigeness of incorporating the family crap, okay, fine, they have to have it in movies these days to appease the beige people. And they had to have the semi-sex scene to appease the beige people that think sex is the most exciting thing in the universe, and nothing else could possibly be better than watching people fake having sex on screen. Because they obviously aren't getting any at home, so they have to watch it voyeuristically in movies. And it's the most fascinating thing in the universe, somehow. Giant monsters, fuck that, let's watch 30 seconds, 40 seconds, 50 seconds of 2 minutes, whatever, of a sex scene. That's way more interesting than giant monsters. It's only an everyday, commonplace thing. Sorry, it's an irritation for me. I hate sex scenes in movies. They're nothing but total filler. They're nothing but a waste of time. They do nothing to tell the story. And if a sex scene is actually important to the story, it's not a good story. Because obviously, if sex is one of the most fascinating aspects of the story, then it's not a very fascinating fucking story. It's banal beige bullshit. Get a fucking life, you loser. Stop being such a boring beige prick. But okay, I digressed. I can't help but digress, apparently. It just seems to be encoded into my muttering, rambling DNA to digress and ramble and rant. Where was I? Oh yeah, Hawaii. Godzilla finally shows up, and once again, where is all the emphasis? What happens? What does Godzilla actually accomplish when he shows up in the movie? The male lead, the single human being, is saved. And then it cuts away to his family watching on the news. We don't get to see anything, which is a violation of one of the first rules of movie making, which is don't tell, show. What are they doing right there? They're telling us that these monsters fought briefly, but we didn't get to see it. They told us that it happened on the news, and we kind of get to see a news clip of it. But really, it isn't about the news clip. It's about his wife being worried. Because he is the center of the universe, and her being worried about him is more interesting and important than the fucking monsters that the movie is supposedly about. I mean, it's called Godzilla, not Soldier Goes Home. Or Soldier Dude, whatever. The Life and Trials of Brody. But that's where all the emphasis is on the soldier. On our male lead here. And you go through the whole movie and it's the exact same thing. I mean, and then it just keeps getting more and more ridiculous. I mean, you have the military being so incompetent that it's moronic. It makes no sense. Why would they put nukes on a train and send them right through the same area as the female Muto? I mean, there's lots of space in the United States. There's plenty of other avenues they could have transported them through. They could have used old trucks that don't have electronics in them. They could have used old planes that don't have electronics in them. I'm sure the military has stockpiles of old war machines somewhere just in case of an EMP event. Because old airplanes... EMP only affects electronics. Anything like a motor engine, an old engine that doesn't have electronics in it, would not be affected by an EMP at all. It is one of the worst things about Hollywood's usage of EMP is that it acts like somehow it just shuts all technology down when most cars probably wouldn't be affected at all, even modern ones. But older cars definitely wouldn't. So, you cannot tell me the military doesn't have any old trucks or planes sitting around somewhere that they could have loaded some nukes on and transported them that way. Why did they do it the way they did, though it was ridiculously stupid and contrived? Because to contrive for the male lead to be on a collision course with the female Muto, who once again ends up finding him more than them finding it. Sure, it's filmed in a way and it's presented in a way that it's like they just stumbled on each other, but, I mean, combined with everything else, it is just so obvious that everything, they were making this script, they wrote this script by bullet point checklist. They didn't care if it was good, they didn't care if it made sense, all they cared about was hitting their fucking checklist, their bullet points, and as long as they wrote them in, that was all they wanted. They didn't care if it was any good at all. And yes, I know every script, every story ever written is contrived using the broadest definition of the word. What I'm talking about here is just the sheer unbelievability. What are the odds that the Muto in Hawaii is going to do what it did? And it's where all the emphasis is placed. It's how they used the elements that they had in the way they did. That turns one human being into the center of the universe. When Godzilla shows up in San Francisco, who's there to see it? His son, the male lead son. Did he need to be there? No. Why was he there? To maintain that the male lead is the center of the universe. When Godzilla starts fighting with the Muto, and we briefly get to see it once again in San Francisco, who's there to see it? His wife, the male lead's wife. Did she need to be there? No. Why was she there? To maintain that the male lead is the center of the universe. Okay, once again, if you watch that movie, the only times that Godzilla and the Muto do not directly relate to the male lead and or one of his family members is on the beach in Hawaii and in Vegas. That's it. Every other time that the giant monsters are in the movie something that they're doing is, everything that they do is in relation to the male lead or one of his family members. It's not just presented from their viewpoint. It has made these people the center of the universe, because despite all the odds against it, they are there front and center for everything. And then even you get to the end fight. Where is all the emphasis? Once again, it's on the male lead dealing with the nest. You see Godzilla fighting with the monsters and he's getting his ass whipped. And then the fucking male lead destroys the nest and saves Godzilla. Has this ever happened in the history of Godzilla movies? When did Godzilla become such a big pussy that he has to have humans help him? Seriously. He's getting killed. Godzilla's gonna fucking die until the dude uses whatever it is they've got, gas, I can't remember, C4, whatever, and destroys the nest. I think it's just they burn off the eggs and take the bomb, right? And that attracts the attention of the female, and that saves Godzilla's ass. Has this ever happened in the history of Godzilla movies prior? There's 28 of them, 29 if you count the 98 movie, which is an average but perfectly acceptable, entertaining movie, in my opinion. Just because it didn't look like Godzilla doesn't mean dick to me. Cosmetics don't mean shit unless you're a shallow cunt. I mean, is that really all you fucking care about? Is because this one looked more like the traditional Godzilla, that made it a Godzilla movie, and that's it? That's all? That's as far as you care? You're really that fucking shallow? And you lack that, any standards at all for how the character is used? And it's perfectly okay that Godzilla is just a big fucking pussy-whipped lapdog who's only in the movie to save one fucking human being twice after being saved by that human being? I mean, how is this Godzilla that we get in this movie? It looks like Godzilla, but it ain't Godzilla. It bears no fucking semblance to Godzilla in any way, shape, or form. Except cosmetically. But this is supposed to be the king of the monsters that gets its ass kicked and has to be saved by a human, and then when it finally makes its comeback and wins, it's from behind. A breath attack from behind. So, not only is this Godzilla a pathetic little wimp, he's a fucking cheap shot artist. Cheap shot artist. I mean, it's a total misuse of the character of Godzilla. I mean, why the hell is the movie called Godzilla when he's only in it to be a deus ex machina? To save the male lead twice. I mean, this human that's in this movie, that the movie is actually about, comes out looking better than Godzilla. How does that make any sense at all? The fucking giant monster ends up looking worse off than the fucking human. The human has 3 encounters with Muto, the two different Muto, 4 actually, 5 if you count when he's a kid, although he wasn't directly involved in that. But he survives the first encounter when the male breaks free. He survives Hawaii. He survives on the train, and then he survives the attack in San Francisco 4 different times actually. He survives these Muto rampaging with minor injuries. And Godzilla gets his ass kicked for a few minutes, gets saved by the human, cheap shots the female Muto, and then limps off. That's Godzilla? Fuck you, no it isn't. It is a woefully American, Western, human-centric view that humans are always the center of the universe. I can't stand that kind of egocentric viewpoint. That there cannot be anything, that Godzilla is not the most important thing in the movie, it's the human. Because for some reason, they think the audience, us the audience, are so stupid that we have to have a human analog, a human to vicariously experience the events through. I want you to present me with things that are happening and let me experience them as a movie watcher. When I watch The Avengers, I'm not watching it as if I'm one of the heroes. I'm watching it as if I'm somebody that's just kind of there experiencing the events alongside them. You know, they don't try to force you to connect to any of the characters in those movies, really. They just let you watch what's happening, and and you experience it the way that you feel best and most comfortable to experience it. Whereas in this Godzilla movie, they have this one human who is the center of the entire fucking universe, because it is such a egocentric viewpoint, or human-centric viewpoint, that we have to have a human to connect to, otherwise we can't enjoy the movie. Maybe I'm reading more into that particular aspect of it, and it's just really bad writing. It could simply be that they didn't realize just how fucking stupid and horrible their scripting was. I doubt it. I think they just didn't fucking care. Supposedly the director loves Godzilla and is a huge fan of Godzilla. He's a fucking liar. Because there was no Godzilla in this movie. It looked like Godzilla and that was it. It did not stick to any element of Godzilla as being a badass, from the kids' movies, a badass kind of superhero that destroys other monsters. That wasn't the Godzilla in this movie. Is a force of nature, a destructive force of nature. That wasn't in this movie. That there was no super destructive Godzilla in this movie. In fact, he seemed at the end of the movie when he was leaving the city, it was like, even when he showed up in the city, it was like he was trying not to destroy human stuff. Again, it's a fucking powder puff lapdog of a Godzilla. It's not Godzilla at all. I mean, you try and draw parallels. I mean, you look at any of the other Godzilla movies, there's absolutely nothing in common with this one. He used the formula, and I don't understand why the hell you would want to use the formula from the kids' movies to make a brand new one, when those were just made to make money. They were made to sell merchandise to kids. But at least they have kind of a cheesy, goofy charm to them, and they're fun. The formula and the plotting in them usually isn't very good, but at least they're fun. This new one, why in the hell would you use the worst possible formula for a Godzilla movie and then suck all the fun out of it on top of that? It goes back to what I was originally saying. It's a gray world with gray characters acting out a beige storyline. And even the monster plot was fucking gray and beige too. And on top of that, you have this utterly and stupidly contrived scripting. I mean, it made absolutely no attempt to adhere to its own logic, even. Internal logic is an important part of storytelling. And if you don't stick to the internal logic of your story that you're writing, it makes no fucking sense. The Muto attacks a nuclear sub to get nuclear missiles out and ignores a nuclear-powered aircraft carrier in favor of the nuclear missiles. Why? Solely to set up the nuclear bomb plot later. Problem with that? Nuclear weapons don't give off radiation. If they did, it would kill the people working with them. They would have to be in suits to operate the damn things. And whatever radioactive elements like the plutonium and whatnot that are inside of the nukes, it's small amounts. Definitely not more than is in a nuclear fucking reactor of an aircraft carrier. So the idea that it would ignore an aircraft carrier's nuclear reactor to go after missiles that don't give off radiation or contain any significant amount of nuclear material is stupid. It's only there to set up the nuclear bomb plot later, which they, again, would not be interested in. And it makes no sense that they would be. The female Muto leaves the nuclear waste facility. It never says that waste facility has been depleted. That seems like an awesome nesting site. Why would she leave? because the male lead's family is in San Francisco and they need her to leave to go to San Francisco because that's where they are. That's it. It is just a horrible script with a beige plot acted out in a gray world by gray people with gray monsters. And even the supposed star of the movie, Godzilla, the name that's on the marquee, is treated as nothing more than an afterthought. He's a fucking pussy-whipped little bitch-ass lapdog to the human in this movie. Which means it's not really Godzilla. It doesn't look like... It looks like Godzilla, but the Godzilla 98... the 98 version of Godzilla at least was more of a Godzilla than this one was. So, I mean, if all you're really concerned about is how they looked, you're a shallow cunt. Because this Godzilla wasn't a Godzilla at all. Like I said, the 98 version was more of a Godzilla than this one, in every way. Except looks. So, yeah, Godzilla 2014, if I was going to use a rating system, I'd give it a 0. Scripting, 0. The entire writing, 0. The story, 0. The plotting, 0. The acting, 0. The CGI, I'll give it about a 7 or an 8. It looked nice. But again, if that's all you care about, you're a shallow cunt. And that's all it had going for it was looks. But even then, Godzilla looked kind of weird. I'm not going to harp about that because, again, to me, cosmetic issues aren't that important. The substance behind it and the story behind it is the most important thing to any movie. And this one was fucking awful.